And welcome back. Today we're going to have a little different lesson, and we're not going to so much look at the different tools, but we're going to look specifically at the camera. And we're going to use that camera in order to get different lighting and angles and stuff like that. So in order for us to do that, we need something with a little bit more direction on it, because otherwise it's going to be hard to tell where everything's at. So we're actually just going to go ahead and get rid of our cube. And we're actually going to go ahead and add a different kind of mesh here. And we're going to use this monkey that's in here. This is a Suzanne mesh, and this is a pre-constructed mesh that's inside Blender. And we're just going to use this here to kind of help us get an idea of what we want to do. Because remember, we're going to want something that kind of we can find the forward facing on. And this will be a real quick way for us to find that. Now, if we want to actually see what our camera is seeing, we've seen this a little before. If we press numpad 0 in here, we will, of course, get a view of what this camera is seeing. We can see, of course, this with this line right here, and that kind of shows us exactly where that's at. And that, of course, is our camera. Now, if I click on the camera here in my collection, you'll see I get this familiar kind of orange border that we see to show that this is selected. And what that allows us to do is we can look at our transform here or up here, and we can then manipulate around this camera. Because maybe we say, you know what, this is good, but I want to see more of this. You know, it's only taking up this small percentage of this. Maybe I want to zoomed in more or zoomed out less. Either way, there's ways to play around this. Obviously, we can affect the location of the camera. So I could, for example, move the camera to the right or to the left. I can move it forward or back. I can move it in the Z direction, so I could go up or down. And of course, we also have the ability to rotate and scale as well. Now, when we're in here in our camera mode, obviously we can play around with this and stuff like that. But part of the key thing here is we want to pretty much set this up so we'll be able to look at this with the ideal viewpoint. Now, we do have the toggling of the camera viewer here, which we can easily toggle in and out of. But maybe we want to get a different viewpoint. Maybe we want to adjust this so that way we can get this camera positioned in such a way where we can easily see, for example, the camera face on. Well, we can, of course, move the camera up here, for example, so I can easily rotate the camera. Or I could try, scaling different things. But all these are different things that, might require a little bit more finesse. For example, like if you notice with the X camera, it's kind of more of an up and down direction. The Y camera kind of turns it more at an angle, which may not be something that you're used to. And of course, the Z camera is actually panning here. Now, if you look here, we do have some tabs along the side here as well for our camera, one of which is view. And in here, we have a couple options. So first of all, we can do camera to view, which enables us to kind of manipulate the view within here. So this is one way to do it, and you can kind of play around with this, and it'll keep the camera view in here. Word of caution, though, is if you have this checked, don't forget to kind of uncheck it when you're done, because otherwise you may end up going to, for example, moving your scene, and then your camera is going to move with you. So just a word of caution there. Now, you do have other ways that you can come in here and enable this to kind of get the ideal viewpoint that you want. And one of those ways is come up here to view, and then we have, of course, our navigation. And we can do things such as a walk navigation, and that will allow us to kind of walk through the scene. I can use like WASD in order to kind of get this around. So it's almost like, playing a video game for those that are familiar with it, to kind of get that viewpoint that you want to have. And again, you can just play around with this to try and find like the exact viewpoint that you want. You also have other letter keys that can kind of help with that. But again, it's just another way to kind of get that viewpoint that you really are looking for here within your scene. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit more here. There we go. And this is looking a lot better than where we first started. We were a lot more zoomed in. And the nice thing is, after I have this scene to where I want it to be, I can, again, still play around with it. But once I have this scene set, and this looks pretty good right here, I can then go ahead and use this in the different pieces of my rendering. All right, so now that we have this done, it's very easy from here, again, to go ahead and turn this into an animation. Just make sure you just click to set your camera, because otherwise you're going to have the camera moving all over the place. And then from there, we can easily go ahead and create a render that would show our character. Now, of course, this is not necessarily the best render that we have right now looking at things. And we'll talk more about that when we get to rendering, about how our lighting and stuff can play a factor in this. Because right now, if we were to go out, one of the things you will notice is it was very kind of dark in our scene there. And that's because where our light source is up here above it. So it's shining down like this, so everything down below here is very much in shadow. Again, don't worry about that right now in your scene as much, because we haven't yet talked about how to affect the lighting. But now that you know how to work the camera, you should be able to go through and do a whole lot more with your scene.